Here's my breakdown and predictions for the full 4th Misfits boxing card. Returning stars in the YouTube boxing scene are making their way back into the ring on a big event to start off the new year with a bang, with KSI vs FaZe Temperrr taking the stage as the headline main event matchup after Dillon Danis has pulled out against KSI. In this video, I'm going to be going through each fight on the card, giving you all my breakdown and personal predictions as to how I see the fights going and who will come out on top. To start the card off, we have Anthony Taylor vs Idris Virgo. This fight is going to be between former MMA fighter turned crossover boxer and Anthony Taylor, who is a controversial figure in the scene but has solidified himself as a guy who will not shy away from taking tough matchups and being active, proven by this fight as he's going up against former reality TV star and 12-0 professional boxer in Idris Virgo, who's making his debut in crossover boxing. This fight is definitely going to be interesting to look out for, as we're going to be seeing Anthony Taylor go against one of his toughest opposition to date, in a former Love Island star and undefeated pro boxer similar to his fight against Tommy Fury. Anthony is an explosive puncher who, while loves to utilize overhand rights, I don't really see him hurting a guy of Idris's caliber or being able to get him out of there. And Idris is a sound boxer, which while he has shown to have some devastating power and finishes, in total he only has a 15% knockout rate over his professional career. And seeing as we have never really seen Anthony Taylor dropped or really hurt all too badly, I don't really see either guy being able to put the other away. I see this fight going the distance, with both guys having success throughout the fight, and with both of these guys probably being the more durable as well as experienced guys on the card. I do expect it to be a good fight, with Idris taking the advantage, I feel like, just due to his background and boxing acumen. Anthony is definitely going to come out explosive pretty early, which could potentially get him clipped and more on guard, but I do see this being a decently back and forth underrated matchup. So my prediction in this one is that it will be a great fight, with Idris Virgo being able to outbox Anthony Taylor and taking home a unanimous decision victory in the end. Next up is the only female fight on the card between Elle, Brooke and Faith Ordway. This fight is between two female influencers with big followings, settling their differences in the boxing ring, with Elle Brooke making her return to the ring after a dominant win over AJ Bunker on the Kingpin boxing event this summer. And in contrast, this is Faith Ordway's first ever fight under the lights and the big stage, which could potentially be the difference maker in this one, with Elle already having had a fight under the bright lights and this not being her first fighting training camp. Faith Ordway, however, shouldn't be taken lightly, as she seems to have been training for a while, looking fast and pretty technically sound in her training footage. For this reason, while I don't know much about these two, I'd give the edge to Faith simply to her looking sharper from what I could see. And I could see both of them coming to fight and going at it, but I see this fight going the distance. And with that, Faith seems to have better technical ability, which I feel like if she's able to stay composed in the arena, could get her the win on the night over Elle Brooke. So my prediction in this one will be Faith Ordway slightly getting the better of Elle Brooke over the course of the fight, taking home a majority decision victory. Next up is the fight between the Madman Swarmz and the Roadman Ryan Taylor. So this is going to be a fight between Ryan Taylor, one of the toughest and most durable guys we've seen on Misfits, as he went toe-to-toe with Slim on Misfits 2, and he'll be going up against Swarmz, who made his debut against KSI on the first Misfits event on 2 weeks notice, with no prior boxing experience. This is definitely going to be an interesting fight, with Swarmz getting his first opportunity to really go through a full boxing training camp, and being prepared for what's ahead of him. It's been almost half a year since Swarmz' debut back in August, compared to Ryan having been boxing for almost a year now, with this being his 4th fight to date compared to this being Swarmz' 2nd. Swarmz has had a pretty impressive body transformation ahead of this fight, losing weight and getting in much better shape than before, but Ryan has been consistently in the gym and training for boxing fights for almost a year. This is what I believe gives Ryan the edge, with not only his experience, but what he's shown in the ring up until this point, with the only time we've seen Swarmz so far being where he got mauled by KSI when he had zero boxing experience, given on a few weeks notice. This is why we can't really assume Swarmz will have the edge in this one, but with us not having seen how his boxing has improved since his debut, he could definitely surprise everyone with his new skills that he has developed since his fight against KSI. Even if Swarmz has gotten much better though, I don't really see him being able to catch up to Ryan, especially seeing Ryan's toughness and grit in his fight against Slim only a few months ago, where he will have improved technically as well since then. So my prediction in this one will be Ryan Taylor via a 4th round stoppage, putting pressure on Swarmz from the jump and drowning him the later the fight goes on, but Swarmz being able to handle the moment a little bit better than his previous fight, and either making or almost making it to the final bell. The next fight on the card is what I believe to be fight of the night between Salt Papi and Josh Brueckner. This is great matchmaking between the talented and flashy boxer and Salt Papi going up against Josh Brueckner, an experienced fighter with former MMA experience, with this being both of their 3rd fights in the YouTube boxing scene. On paper, this is actually an extremely even matchup, with Salt Papi having the edge in terms of pure boxing experience, but with Josh having been training boxing for quite a while, to be fair to him, making his debut in 2019 on the undercard of KSI vs Logan Paul 2. Josh also seems to have a sizable weight advantage over Salt Papi, with Salt Papi having to move up 10 pounds to take on Josh from his own words, which I feel like could play into Josh's hands pretty well. In their last fights, both went up against subpar opposition to say the least, with Salt Papi absolutely starching his opponent Andy Worski in 30 seconds, and Josh Brueckner beating up Chase Demore for 2 rounds before getting the TKO victory after Chase didn't want anymore. Salt Papi is a very tricky southpaw with extraordinary technical ability for the scene, utilizing great feints, great footwork, and showing his fast hands in his last fight, and with Josh also being a tricky fighter but in a different way, as he consistently puts pressure on his opponents, coming forward and mauling them with body shots before coming upstairs and putting heavy looping shots on his opposition. Within the scene, both guys have never really been tested against any high-level opposition such as each other, which makes this matchup especially intriguing with there being a lot of unknowns, since both of them are pretty untested. We know they have skills, but we haven't really seen them deal with adversity, be pushed to the limit, or be in there against a guy who is there to win and has a good chance at winning, like they're going to be forced to in this matchup, which is why I believe it will be a great back and forth fight, and the fight of the night for this card. So my prediction in this one is that we're going to be seeing a great fight with Salt Papi edging it by unanimous decision, as I see him having the better technical ability and being able to get the better of Josh over the course of the fight, with his superior experience in the squared circle, with him having a background in the sport before becoming an influencer, but I for sure see Josh putting up a good fight. And by the way, if you guys are enjoying the content so far, be sure to leave a like and subscribe because I'll definitely be bringing you more. But back on track, the co-main event of this card is the return of the Hitman with Slim versus Tom Zanetti. This is an interesting matchup with 5-0 veteran in the scene Slim, who has a very unique style and is always game to take on any fight, going up against a newcomer in the scene in Tom Zanetti, who, while this is his debut in YouTube boxing, he has been training for a while and has a Muay Thai background. Slim is a proven guy in the scene with solid wins against the likes of FaZe Temperrr and Ryan Taylor, and with his activity as well as experience under the bright lights, I feel like that could be the difference in the matchup against Tom Zanetti. Zanetti was scheduled to fight on the second Misfits boxing card against 2 different opponents, which both ended up pulling out, and while he didn't get to make the walk on the night, he still gained experience in that camp that he can take with him when he goes up against Slim. Stylistically, we don't really know what to expect out of Tom Zanetti, as we haven't seen him in an actual fight, as he has a lot of unknowns about his ability and skills at this time. Slim is an interesting fighter who, while has experience, he also has a very unorthodox style that is going to be tricky to figure out, as we haven't really seen anyone have too much success against Slim up until this point, with the only time we really saw him in any trouble was when Ryan Taylor was taking his shots and walking through them, as well as giving Slim some of his own shots, but not being able to significantly hurt or drop Slim in that fight. One potential big gap in Slim's game could be his cardio, as we did see him starting to slow down in his last fight against Ryan Taylor relatively early, which with Slim having a full-length training camp this time around, he could have worked on cleaning that up and honing in on his strength and conditioning a bit more. So my prediction in this one will be Slim getting a 3rd round stoppage against Tom Zanetti, as I think Slim's activity paired with his experience under the bright lights and having a full training camp for this fight, I think will have him setting up his shots and eventually timing Tom Zanetti and putting him down, being proven as one of the higher level guys in this YouTube boxing space. Finally, the main event sees KSI getting back in the ring, going up against the founder of FaZe Clan in FaZe Temperrr. This fight sees the return of one of, if not the biggest star in YouTube boxing in KSI, as he is set to take on a tricky 6'4" southpaw in FaZe Temperrr, who has been consistent and active within the sport, kind of unlike KSI until more recently. KSI is fighting his toughest opposition since his big fight against Logan Paul back in 2019, with him taking on a guy much bigger than him, and with this being the first southpaw that he'd be going up against thus far. Well, this fight was planned to be against Dillon Danis, who was more similar to KSI's height compared to Temperrr, who was around 5 inches taller than him. That could actually prove to be a challenge for KSI to get past, as he has never faced or prepared for opposition this tall. Similar to Dillon Danis, however, Temperrr is a southpaw that KSI has been preparing this camp for, and Temperrr has been very active within the YouTube boxing scene, with this being his 4th fight within the span of the last year, and being an interesting fighter with tools that could potentially lead him well into being able to outbox KSI from range. With the size and reach advantage of Temperrr, it will be interesting to see how he approaches this fight, with KSI being an inside fighter who pressures opponents and is non-stop on the front foot. KSI has a high volume and a lot of boxing experience dating back to 2018, compared to Temperrr's experience only dating back to 2021, even though they've had a similar amount of fights and training camps already, considering Temperrr's activity in the last year. This isn't to discredit Temperrr's prior fighting experience, however, having kickboxing and Muay Thai experience prior to taking up boxing, which while he isn't known to have competed in any combat sports before YouTube boxing, he is known to have been boxing at least for solely training purposes for quite a while, before deciding to make his way into the ring on the big stage, which is why he's one of the guys who have picked up the sport the quickest and shown an ability to put punches together as well as manage himself within the squared circle under the bright lights pretty well. Temperrr's fight against Slim was where we saw his biggest gaps and where KSI will try to take advantage of the holes in Temperrr's game, mainly being his defense. In that fight, we saw Temperrr get knocked out, being his only loss to date after Slim started to catch him and eventually put him onto the canvas. KSI, having seen this, will definitely try to expose the same weaknesses in Temperrr that he's seen up against Slim, but considering Temperrr lost that way already, he will definitely have worked to clean that up and learn from mistakes since that outing. Since that fight, Temperrr got a first round knockout win over Overflow, who got put down after the first left hand that Temperrr put out there. And while this fight didn't show us much, it was a good confidence booster for Temperrr to get back into his winning ways. Stylistically, I see KSI having the edge, as even though Temperrr will look to be disciplined on the back foot, maintaining his distance and using his physical attributes to his advantage, I see KSI being able to push Temperrr back and swarming him with his pressure, which I think with what we've seen from Temperrr up until this point, he will shell up on the ropes and eventually get caught and be put down. So my prediction in this one will be KSI overwhelming Temperrr from the jump, letting him up around halfway through the fight and getting the stoppage in the third round. So yeah, those are my individual thoughts on all these fights happening on January 14th, with some great big fights being brought on the 4th Misfits event so far, and this being KSI's return, with some interesting fights being on the card. Unfortunately, we did have a last minute fight get cancelled between Joe Fournier and Tony Christodoulou, but we also do know that there will be one more mystery fight with the mystery opponent that was supposed to fight FaZe Temperrr still going to be fighting on this card. But yeah, let me know your own predictions in the comments down below and how you see all of these fights going, as well as how you may differ from my picks for these fights. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the content from this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe check out some more on this channel. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.